Hey everyone, how's it going? I'd like to welcome you all to the latest SKALE AMA. I'm here with our co-founder and his fancy microphone, uh,
Yeah,
Stan Gladko.
it's a very good microphone.
I love that microphone. I put one on order, so at some point I'll have a cool fancy microphone too. I'd like to welcome everyone. Just so you know, please feel free I think you can probably still submit a couple questions if you want. There's a chat on the side, so please feel free to chat there. And Stan, I think you wanted to just do a quick hello and maybe a quick little update.
Yeah, hey guys. I just got back from San Francisco, where you probably know that Scale Engineering is located now in Lisbon. But I went to San Francisco to reconnect with our mostly business and marketing team, and also solutions engineering. And we discussed for 2 days. We had the offsite, and we discussed directions about scale, basically what scale is and where do we go from now, because we have this important moment where we have the product, it's running, we have the users, the users are growing, so we need to refocus and kind of make things more efficient. So it was all about making things more efficient and making our focus more direct and more precise.
Cool. Yeah, it was a great time. I think everyone who was there left feeling incredibly energized, right?
Mhm.
And not just energized, but focused in a way that we're going to kill it. And I think if you guys have had a chance, please check out scale.space/stats. We'll be talking about that a little bit more as we go into some of the questions that were submitted. But that's a great place to learn a little bit more about what's going on. And I will say, on the alpha end, like, I just saw an amazing demo this morning about some of our, our new products that are going to be coming out. So super excited there. I think why don't we just let's jump into it. Okay, first question. Michael submitted a question. It says, "Can Scale be considered an Ethereum L2 solution?"
I mean, that's a super interesting question, and we've been asked so many times this question. And it's a bit of a religious question. It's like people, I think, in the ancient times, they were discussing things like, if God is so powerful, can God create another God which is more powerful than itself? Something like that. There are some questions you can just keep on discussing forever, and so just actually during the offsite, I've been working with Jack, our CEO, and we kind of had many discussions about layer 2. But the way to start, I think, let's just I'll try to look at things from a different perspective. The question is, can Scale be considered an Ethereum layer 2 solution? And I think the word solution is the key. You need to solve something. And apparently the question actually presumes that layer 1 doesn't solve something, and layer 2 needs to solve something that layer 1 didn't solve, right? That's what the question presumes. And then we need to understand what actually do you need to solve. And if you think about this, let's think a little bit about crypto, like from a very generic perspective. Bitcoin was created before, believe it or not. iPhone was created after Bitcoin, right? Since the creation of Bitcoin and iPhone, do you know how many iPhones and smartphones have been produced in the world? More than 10 billion smartphones. And if you look at crypto, you have a million users at best. I think for things like smart contracts and DeFi, you have way less than a million users. And then since creation of smartphones, on top of this, like 10 billion smartphones, you have the next generation things like Uber, right? Or like WhatsApp, or many other applications that themselves have billions of users. So since the creation of crypto, there were essentially 2 generations of technologies that actually got to billions of users. And with crypto, we still have millions, which is tiny. Probably in many cases, way less than a million. So when you're saying that L2 needs to provide a solution, there is something that L1 doesn't provide. And I think what it doesn't provide the blockchain that can be used by everyone. If you take public transportation, if you're on a subway, no one around you is using blockchain. People will be using smartphones. They will be using Uber, right? They will be using WhatsApp. You won't see them using blockchain. So what L2, if we just generically say that what L2 needs to do is actually make blockchain usable by people, by consumers around the world, compared to just a very small number of enthusiasts. Like before this crypto winter, there was a crypto summer, and all kinds of applications were about like creating something with lots and lots and lots of value, high value NFTs, tokens, and having a very small number of traders trade very high value items. So that was all about crypto, like just like 6 months ago. And if you look at history, economy and technology never repeats itself. So something which was super hot last year, it won't be hot next year. So if we get out of this crypto winter, it's not going to be about high value NFTs, and it's not going to be about high value tokens. That was the cool thing, like the last summer, right? It has to be something different. And I think the something different will be actually people using blockchain. And if you want people to use blockchain, you actually need to go into opposite direction. You want to make things low cost and actually free, right? I'm maybe talking too much, but I just want to bring another analogy. Let's say you live in a city, right? Like all of us, some of us live in the cities, some of us live in villages, but you live in a city and you wake up in the morning and you go and drink coffee, right? You go to a coffee shop nearby. I mean, wouldn't it be more economically, would it make more sense economically if you would pay like 1 cent just to improve the road? You walk on the road, on the public walkway. Wouldn't be make more sense to make all of this public walkways actually paid for? So you would pay 1 cent, would be better. They would probably clean it better. But if you would do this, people would never go to coffee shops. So you actually would destroy economy if you would start charging people for walking around the city, even if the charge would be like tiny charge. So that shows how important, how huge difference it is between a technology which is free and technology for which you even charge a little bit. That's why if you think that Scale needs to solve this problem, that is the second problem. The first problem about high value people trading high value assets, and the second problem is about everyone using blockchain. I think, yes, we are layer 2, and we are layer 2 to Ethereum. And Ethereum mainnet by itself cannot solve this problem because it has limited resources. But as a next generation thing, as the second thing, we are a layer 2. And when we were like walking around with Jack during this offsite, we had brought up all kinds of different algorithms. What is layer 1, layer 2? And I told him basically, okay, if you have a house, and your house has just one floor, right? And your family is growing, and at some point you have nowhere to live, right? So you build a second floor. Would you call this floor layer 2? And what do you call it? This floor, the second floor. And probably it wouldn't matter if the floor would be made out of wood or out of stone. You just need to live somewhere, right? You wouldn't care. So I think, yes, we are layer 2. So I myself, the reason why I'm bringing up these examples, I think that the word layer 2, the term has to be treated generically, and we need to come to it from the point, what do people want, and what problem does it solve that layer 1 doesn't solve? Definitely the Scale is layer 2, and but this is also a very limited description, because if you say layer 1, layer 2, you kind of presume that layer 1 is less important than layer 2. And in this case, it's kind of the opposite, right? Like it's like Tesla Roadster and the Tesla Model 3, right? Imagine that Ethereum is Tesla Roadster and we're like Model 3. Model 3 actually making things cheaper right? Creating public roads is more important than actually selling private jets. So this layer 2 is the next generation thing, but actually in the future needs to become more important, I think, than layer 1.
Yeah, I agree, and we've talked a lot about this internally, and just the fact that you could almost imagine a future very quickly where there's so many scale chains that you've actually got as much, if not a lot more, traffic running on scale chains than you do on Ethereum. But Ethereum is still kind of a core piece that's running alongside. So I'm going to quickly aside, because I saw an interesting question on Scale's business model. And currently, we're in that growth phase. But I think the biggest thing to understand is that we are not a transaction-based company. We've sort of taken this, if you could create a decentralized AWS model, right, and then take that and essentially create that in sort of the Web3 world, that is Scale. So people pay a monthly fee, DApp developers or projects or DAOs pay this monthly fee that then gets fed back into the validators. So, maybe Stan, just to kind of ping off of that, Bhakti in the side there, can you talk a little bit about Scale's business model?
Yeah. If you look at, in general, not only at Scale, but on pretty much all decentralized networks, the funny thing is that, when they started, people didn't really think about business model. The blockchain, for many people, was such a new thing that, they were just trying all kinds of things. But I think that for any network, not only for Scale, but for any network, the principle is about the business model is very simple. You have the community. The community has different kinds of people. There are users, there are like DApp developers, there are like core developers. The goal of the business model is to make the community grow and make the project grow and make the network grow. So the network, the network actually issues the token. So the network needs to distribute the token in an economically efficient way to grow itself, to make itself stable, to improve itself. So essentially, the correct model for the business model for the token is where the network grows, everyone is happy, there are more DApps, but this requires fine-tuning, it requires ideas, because it's all like very new things. In our case, I think the model that we are taking, we think that the entity that pays for the chain, for the transactions, shouldn't be the user. It should be the DApp community. So, ultimately, someone needs to pay for the chain and for the transactions, because nothing comes free, right? If you watch YouTube, you think that videos are free on YouTube. Google pays for those videos. You go to Facebook, you upload photos for free. Well, Facebook pays for the uploading of those photos and for the storage. But it's an efficient business model, in particular because consumers are usually not very economically proficient. So it's hard for consumer to make an economic decision. It's much better if the economic decision is made by a bigger thing, like in this example, by a DApp community. So our model is that users get things for free, they have transactions for free, but the community that actually controls the particular DApp, this community actually pays for the chain. And then the community finds out how to compensate this. How can this, how to find a way to actually make their business model work. So that's our idea. And we already see, actually, the interesting thing that we already see some of the DApps that run on Scale or will be running on Scale. They come to us and say, yes, we want to pay the network because we want the network to be stable. Yes, we want to be fair. So we already see that the communities actually do want to pay to the network. So which actually is a really good sign. And what we are working on now is a more refined model of how the network charges for those chains.
Cool. Well, thanks, Bhakti, for that question, and thanks, APD, for believing that Scale has utility and the people in it are really focused on that. I'm going to take another question that we got in from one of our users. Username is Victor, and Victor's asking, what is the status of the Metaport?
Metaport is a super important thing for Scale. The reason is that we have two problems. One problem that we solved already is zero transaction fees. Users don't pay. When they use Scale, they don't pay. And because of that, Scale can be this kind of a foundation which is totally transparent. If you using internet, you don't really care about routers and switches and cables and providers, sending packets from one place to another. It's all hidden for you. Very much, we think that that's something which is going to happen to blockchain. Blockchain is going to get really successful when people forget about its existence. When you use a particular DApp, you won't know if it runs on Scale, you won't see Scale. What you will see would be a game or financial application or crowdsourced application, anything. But you won't really know about Scale. That's what we want to achieve. And number one thing how we can achieve it is to provide zero transaction fees. We do have it now. This is a solved problem. But problem number two is improving user interfaces, improving UIs to such a degree that Web3 feels exactly as simple as Web 2. And you can't really say this now, you can just take an example of a MetaMask. How hard is it to use it? How many confirmation boxes? How much text do you need to read? It's just incredibly hard. So we think that in order for people to actually start using blockchain, we need to make it usable by just a regular consumer, by a regular person. And we'll keep on improving our UI to get it to the point where everyone will use it and people will say, okay, that's just like using like a website, just as easy as using like a mobile game. So Metaport is where we put all of our UI efforts. It can be used for many important things, in particular to see how many tokens you have. You do transfer tokens between different Scale chains. We have the first iteration, which we made as simple as possible without changing the core of the Ethereum network, of the Ethereum APIs. I think at some point there will be the second iteration of our UI, where we'll actually introduce some extensions, some minimum extensions to Ethereum protocol itself, to allow for transactions with less confirmation boxes. Because what's killing the user experience are those confirmation boxes. It's okay if you're sending someone like $1 million, but if you're playing a game and you see like confirmation boxes popping up all the time, it's just not gonna work. So Metaport is incredibly important for us. The developer of Metaport, Dima, he is like super excited about this. He's not only a software engineer, he's also a designer. He likes art, he paints. So he actually did a really great job, I think, even in the first iteration. But the year of 2023 will be the year of Metaport for us. And with each iteration, we're going to make it less and less complex. And we need to, it's a life and death question for us to make the UI reasonably easy to use for regular person in this planet, basically.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, we all will probably acknowledge that when it came to crypto in the early days, it was all about utility and nothing about usability. And I think we'd all agree at this point that at the bare minimum, utility and usability have to be on par, if not usability becoming the first and most important thing, and utility coming second. So yeah, these are all important things that we're addressing right now, with Metaport. All right, I'm going to jump to the next question. We have a question from, and I'm just gonna venture a guess, so forgive me, Tolga Gorlu. And the question is, are you satisfied with Scale's usage rates? Which I think he's referring to our stats page, which you can see at scale.space/stats. Are you satisfied with Scale usage rates? And what are the other activities that you're going to be embarking on to increase Scale usage?
We are not satisfied, but we are excited. I think the feelings we have about this, we're excited. And we're also very anxious to do anything and everything possible to keep our metrics growing. And we all agree inside Scale that our metric at this moment, the main metric that we have, is how many transactions Scale does a day, a week, a month. That's the most important metric to us, because as we just discussed, what we want to have is to provide a solution where everyone in the world will use blockchain, and transactions per day. It's a pretty good metric. And so we all concentrated on this metric. Then the question becomes how do we actually make this metric grow? We want natural growth. Every single transaction that happens on Scale now, we have no control over it. We don't really run anything that actually makes more transactions, and we don't want any of it. We want people. We don't. Scale is just a software company. We provide the software, SKALE Labs, right? The community around things. When you say we want the growth, we want the natural growth, that people actually doing useful things on Scale, and this actually leading to the growing of the transaction count. Another good thing about transactions is that if the more transactions we have, the more testing we have of our consensus, of our blockchain. Let's say you have 25 Scale chains, and let's say you run them for a year. Essentially, you have 25 blockchain years of testing of your blockchain. Guess what? Even Bitcoin doesn't have 25 blockchain years. So the fact that we have many chains, coupled with the fact that we have many transactions, makes our system better. We fix bugs. We are becoming more stable. People trust us more because they see other people running transactions on us. And that's why the next 3 to 6 months is so important for us, because if we can keep the growth for the next 3 and 6 months, the next 6 months will be easier. The more we grow, the easier is it to make for other people to make a decision to join Scale. So the next 6 months is super important. If we can grow it for the next 6 months, then life will become much easier for us. So yes, this metric is super important, and this is the market segment that we logically decided to target, because we think that when crypto winter ends, it is not going to be about just thousands of users, using this blockchain for hugely valued transactions, like what happened last year, last crypto summer. It's going to be about many people using blockchain for all kinds of things, not necessarily even having value. Some of the things you may be actually helping environment, or maybe you'll be helping to provide better separation of trash or anything, right? Yeah. But these are the ideas that didn't happen last time during the last crypto summer, just because there was a single chain and things were really expensive. So that's why this metric is super important. We're doing everything possible to improve this metric. And another thing, last thing I want to say is that we're also looking into some very early stage startups, because for this new crypto summer, what the industry needs is new ideas. And these new ideas will come not from reincarnation of old things, but from some totally new things. So I think one way for us to strategically grow this metric is to partner with startups, however early stage, that have as their goal growing things so people actually use blockchain.
Yeah, and blockchain's going to mature, and I think as it matures, just like when the mobile space matured, metrics like monthly active users, daily active users become more and more critically important. I remember seeing an article about another project in CoinDesk with this exclamation of they're at 20,000 users. I sort of laughed. I was like, okay, so if you look at our stats page, we already hit 50,000 users, and so we need to be getting out there to show people like there's actual usage and there's actual use cases. So that's really exciting. So again, go to the stats page. I encourage you to kind of keep an eye on that. And you know what you can do if you're a user out there and you're a big Scale supporter, screenshot the stats page and stick it on your Twitter handle and just get it out there and help spread the word about how much Scale is actually being used. All right, let's move on to our next question from Vladimir Rostova. Everyone is talking about TVL. Is that the best way to measure how successful a network is?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting question. I really like reading crypto news. Sometimes I read them too much. I read CoinDesk, I read Cointelegraph, I read Decrypt. These three sites I read all the time. Sometimes I read them and I tweet that I like stuff. Sometimes I tweet I don't really like stuff, but I really, really actually read the things all the time. And I think the journalism, the news, they a little bit less during the last crypto summer. I think they a little bit overestimated the importance of the metric TVL, to the point that, as we now know, during the last crypto summer, there were people that were like self-referentially staking tokens from one DApp to another DApp to another DApp and doing this like 10 or 100 times. So the tokens got counted many, many, many times and TVL would go up. I think TVL is all about trading, right? An interesting thing about trading is that that's the only activity where you don't really need people to use the blockchain. You could just have 1,000 people, because when you trade, you don't, I mean, if you have like a WhatsApp, like a Facebook, or like, you know, a smartphone, well, these things would die. They wouldn't be able to exist if they would just have 1 million users. Because, you know, you either essentially get to 1 billion users or your solution doesn't work. But for trading is a very lonely activity, and you can just have like several thousand people all over the world trading supposedly abstractly huge amounts of money, which has which are very self-referential and have the paper value, and the value comes from other people self-referentially like sparring up the value. So this thing, that's something which happened during the last crypto summer, and the metric for this was TVL. It was fantastic metric for the previous crypto summer, but it is not going to repeat. Things that the history shows, especially of technology, that the previous hard thing is not going to happen in the future. It's just not going to happen. And in addition to that, we see what's happening in the world economy. There's huge inflation. It is war, right? In Europe, there's a huge problem with energy costs. The world there was a COVID, right? So the world unfortunately got through several really bad things happening at the same time. And as a result, it is almost guaranteed that for the next couple of years, there will be really tight money, tight finances in this world. So if we continue to use TVL as a metric, it is guaranteed almost completely that this metric will not grow for the next couple of years. It's just the world economy is just not going this direction. Because of that, I think TVL was great. It's a great thing which happened last year. I don't think if last crypto summer, I don't think it's gonna get repeated. I mean, it's not the metric for the future. The metric for the future is how many people use blockchain without any value. You know, there are many users of blockchain where there's no value, right? It's just coordination of people, cooperation, you know, just creating a better communities. There are some things of low value. There are some crowdsourced things also of low value. So I don't think TVL is important. And actually, this TVL thing was pretty much, it was a singular event. All other startups or big projects that have been created during the last like 20 years, they're always starting from making things free initially, growing the user base, and also only monetizing later, right? Like Google for almost like 10 years didn't make any money, a single dollar, right? Then they came up with a click-through ads thing. Facebook takes pretty much any like Uber, take many WhatsApp, right? Almost always the idea for a startup was first get users and then let people use the thing and only then monetize. And I think, especially having the tight finances that I just discussed, I think that's what's going to happen for this next crypto summer. Next crypto summer may happen when people start using blockchain, and it may be that many people will use it with almost no monetary value.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. Someone noted DeFi Pulse introduced the TVL concept. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before, right? And another analogy to, I feel like I'm in Stan mode now. I get to use analogies. Another analogy is if you think about all of the billions of dollars that go through NASDAQ or they go through the New York Stock Exchange, incredibly important to the economy. But these aren't high value companies. Which is worth more, NASDAQ or AWS or Amazon, right? If you really start to think about, and which is, in many ways, which is more important to the economy. I mean, Amazon is running all of these things. They're the back end of all of your applications on your phone, and at the same time, they're selling things and they're e-commerce. So I think that TVL as a standard for somehow showing that, like, you're a great network is on a downtrend. It's important. It's not going away, but it's not going to be what really shows things. Let me jump to the next question. This is Bossical 805. So I don't know what language this is in, but we translated it. And the language, the question essentially is, let's see, without sufficient funds, each project cannot carry out its construction properly. For me, the main priority is having sufficient funds to run a project. Is your team financially able to carry out its project? How do we generate revenues for the project and users? So that's the question that came in.
I think I think at this point, every startup starts with engineering, right? Usually, people start with engineering team. The engineering team there's an idea, right? The engineering team produces something. And then the next stage, usually people try to get the thing used and get feedback from people that actually use the thing. And that's where actually 4 out of 5 startups die, right? Like startups die because no one uses them. You create something and people don't use it. And in the modern world, there's so much software, there's so many products, it's really, really hard to create something that people want to use. So Scale has the product. We actually successfully passed the stage where people are using us, right? We're growing. We still have we're still small, but we're growing. And now another really exciting thing, as I mentioned already, for us is the apps that run on Scale come to us and they say, guys, how much do we need to pay for the chain? Because if I'm a DApp, I better run on a network which is stable. So actually, it's in my best interest to pay to this network some reasonable amount of money, so people can actually it's a sustainable business for the network, right? So we see these very good things where just like when I was in San Francisco, our business guys were telling me the stories where different DApps come and say, yes, we want to pay. And because we want to be fair, we understand, if we run on your infrastructure, we want you guys to be successful long term. So we have all of these, I think, positive indicators. People want to run things on our network. People want to pay to the network. The network is we don't run any of our validators, any of our software. So when you pay to the network, right? And ultimately things get paid to validators and people who run these nodes, servers and stuff. But the network, this open source software and the validators that run the software, the community, it does look like that there is actually a sustainable business model. And the funny thing is that if you look at us and other guys don't have sustainable business model because they just have a single chain. Let's look at let's say like Solana, right? Solana says that, yeah, our chain, we process so many transactions and our transaction fees are tiny. But if you have just a single chain and you are charging 1 million less than Ethereum, right? How can your network be a sustainable business then? So the funny thing, the really, really funny thing that people don't realize about all of these networks is that they actually, I mean, they never specified what the sustainable business model is for them. For us, we do feel that the business model is sustainable because if the network charges a little bit, a reasonable amount per chain, the network can sustain itself by just becoming more efficient, producing more chains, all this running on more efficient computers. I know that many of our validators do use AWS. I personally really hope that at some point our validators will start moving away from AWS to realize more efficiency and to create more sustainable business model. We do see this, just today, one of our validators is saying, we're moving from AWS to another infrastructure because it's more efficient. They charge us less. So in the perfect world, if Scale grows, we have the sustainable business model where the network charges reasonable, sustainable fees from DApp communities. And then there's also this super important moment of innovation. If you are paid, if the network is paid per chain, particular amount, then the validators need to innovate to cut costs, right? So AWS nowadays is 10 times more expensive than just if you buy like a hardware server, run it yourself, right? So hopefully, and we see this, but some of the validators will say, no, we don't want to pay 10 times the AWS. We'll go run our own server. And hopefully, as this thing progresses, people become more efficient, the network becomes more efficient, there are more DApps, and there is this kind of a sustainable business where everything is slowly improving. But the key is to have many chains, because if you just have a single chain, no one ever explained to me how can Solana network be economically sustainable by charging 1 million times less fees than Ethereum. So we do believe that we have encouraging signs about the sustainability model for the network, and we'll keep on experimenting and trying things, and there will be community votes trying to kind of polish the sustainability model even more.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think part of the question was related to just how long can Scale keep going? We won't need to raise another round. We've got a couple years worth of runway left, so we're excited about that because one of the other things that I think we don't talk about a lot, and I think the industry doesn't talk about a lot, is just having a team that has built and produced products and taken them to market before and understands that process, because I think crypto has changed the market and changed the way we market and changed many things, but there are core fundamentals in bringing a product out to market that don't change. And having, for instance, an engineering team that kind of knows how to deliver a product to market that works and knows how to make sure that it's listening to the customer, and having a marketing team and a sales organization that are focused on listening to the customers. And so I think building the team has been a critical important that I have to hats off to both you and Jack. You guys have really focused on building the right team as opposed to just scaling a big team really fast. And I think that's made a lot of difference. A lot of difference as well.
Totally, Marcus. I can tell you the story. When I was living in Silicon Valley, I knew many people that worked at Apple and worked at iPhone in particular, right? And you would think that, and I myself, I worked when I started my software engineering career, I worked at the core Java virtual machine teams responsible for Java programming language. So essentially, my first day at my job, I realized that the product is literally used by tens of millions of people, and now Java is everywhere, right? But the point I want to make is that both the Java virtual machine team had like 20 people. And people told me that at Apple, the core team that does the smartphone, the iPhone, the core iOS software is actually tiny, maybe also like 20, 50 people. Because, the funny thing about software is that if you want to do something really interesting, you need to actually shrink the team. Pretty much after people can't sit in the same room anymore, you lose lots of cooperation and like. So we've been really specific at Scale about focusing and keeping our engineering team really small. We are and also the same with our business team. We've been filtering people on the way in very much. We're not hiring much. So the Scale team is super lean. We don't have an office, both in the San Francisco team and the Lisbon team work from co-working space. Many people work from home. We have people all over the world. We have a decentralized team. So we are incredibly efficient, a small organization. So it's almost impossible to find a way for us to go down, because also it's such a hard subject. We could also, like, if we want to make money, we could go also do just some consulting and like help some enterprises to run Scale, whatever. So there are many things which you could take and to make us sustainable. We're not scared about running out of money. And one thing which is really important is that in the modern world, actually it's not hard for someone to make enough money, like to drink coffee and like whatever, eat stuff. But in the modern world, what's really hard for people is to find importance and some cause in their life, especially that we have the software and AI and many things that people used to do. Many of those things are now done by AI, right, or software. So in the modern world, I believe the problem of making enough money to sustain yourself is actually is becoming a little less important. What actually is important is actually doing something which makes sense. And many people try and they can't. So Scale, we are incredibly sure that we will not have a problem at Scale, about like us running out of money and then whatever, not being able to buy a cup of coffee. This is not going to happen. But I totally agree with you, Marcus. This from the beginning was because Scale is also so lean, and we're a tiny organization, and we have no intention to become a larger organization. So we're just software guys, we're open source guys developing the software, and everything else we hope to pass to the community, even things which are not passed to the community now. There will be lots and lots of things which will be like releasing anything and everything and making the community make decisions. So this is the best thing that Scale can do is totally ultimately dissolve in the community, and then you can't really destroy Scale, because Scale won't be anything but just open source software.
Yeah, and it's super important to note, Scale is open source. You can go to GitHub. Please check out our GitHub page. Go onto our Discord, go onto our Telegram. Those are both available. And we don't run any of the nodes. This is a fully decentralized project. Unlike some of the other projects that are out there, who actually end up running one or many of their own nodes, we're decentralized. We really believe in that vision. It's important. This sort of leads me into the next question. Actually, it's an interesting and good segue. Murat, I am so not going to get this last name. Murat Gesit, I think I got that maybe okay. He asks, many projects prefer to launch their projects in bull times due to the falling market volume in the bear market. What gives you confidence in your survival during this bear market?
I usually don't give people, first of all, lawyers always say that you shouldn't give people like
no financial advice, and I think he's actually. I think he's talking about us as a team and the project, right, not about the token.
But I always like just to give people economic advice. You can always tell people general things about economy, and I can tell you guys, I can just recommend. There's one book I keep on recommending, which is really deep book about economy. It's called The Alchemy of Finance. It's written by George Soros, a very famous, U.S. financial guy. And he's been studying markets, how markets function and how the economy functions, including how the technology economy functions. And what he found was that technology and in general economy always has cycles, ups and downs, like crypto winters, people call them recessions, depressions, and then you have bull markets. So this has been happening in the economy for the last 500 years. So usually what was interesting that he found was that when you have a bull market usually means that people have an idea and they're happy about this idea. For instance, to give you an example, right? Like when Facebook got successful, for 5 years, there was a bull market for social networks. People just loved social networks and like messengers and things. And, people just didn't want to do anything else except social networks. And there was a then bull market about like smartphones and mobile apps. So there is bull markets, but the interesting thing about the bull market, downside of the bull market is that people are usually not open to new ideas. So in a bull market, people they have a particular point of view and they don't want to change it because things are good. So it actually keeps on reinforcing them in their point of view. So that's why actually in a bull market, launching something interesting is really, really hard. For example, right, like last crypto summer, just like 6 months ago, it would be incredibly hard for someone to launch a social, like a crypto Twitter, right? Or like a Web3 competitor to Google. Why? Because everyone was saying, oh, why do you need this? You just need to have another clone of Uniswap. Everyone was doing clones of Uniswap. So during bull markets, the interesting thing is that people usually are totally not responsive to new ideas. They just keep improving the old ideas. Now we're in a crypto winter, or you can call it recession, right? That it's more like a classic word. We're in a crypto recession. And during the recession, what typically happens is that initially people get disillusioned in old ideas. That's number one. And at some point they find a new idea and then they become excited about the new idea. And then another bull market happens. That's actually what's going to happen this time too. I think in this crypto winter, we are about like in the middle, where if you just read news, people are all about it. People do get disillusioned about the old ideas, but there's still very little try for people to actually come up with new ideas. If I open up like CoinDesk or Cointelegraph or whatever, I don't really read much like articles about how we do improve this thing. What else should we do? What other direction should we take? But it will happen at some point, and because of that. And like there are so many new exciting things. Like we have a startup that is building on Scale. They are building like a totally new way for people, for communities, like a Discord, but with like a metaverse feel where the community feels more personal. Just an example, last week ago, a guy called me and he's doing a startup which is letting people to authenticate to crypto using Gmail. So all of these new things are happening. And I think that today is the best time actually to launch something. If you want to do something really disruptive, that's the best way to do it, because now actually investors, everyone like the VCs are actually much more receptive to disruptive new things than during the bull market. So actually this is good. And what we at Scale are trying to do every time someone comes to us with a new disruptive idea, we try to dedicate lots of attention to this particular team or person or whatever. So if you want to do something crazy, like to change the world, like things people typically do when they like apply to like Y Combinator or whatever, something really big, we would really love to talk to us, because I think that's also how Scale can become successful, by supporting these bigger things.
Cool. Let's see. Question from Pan. The top 5 scaling solutions for ETH don't always include Scale. What developments would give Scale the edge over some of these solutions?
I think the way we measure the top 5, we have our metric, which is growing. I think the way I subjectively measure top 5 is by how many features people require from Scale engineering team. And I can tell you that Scale is overloaded, engineering team is overloaded with features that people say, okay, add this, add that. So there is a very different, I think, if you look at Scale from inside, from outside. If you are part of Scale engineering, it's lots of work, and we don't have any even like remote feeling that we're not being used. It's the opposite. We like every day it's like it's a firefight, because people want features, people want help and things. So from this perspective, I think we don't want to boil the ocean. I would not say that Scale is number 1 everywhere for all blockchain, but in the area of the blockchain market where we at Scale want to focus, we are number 1. And the market at which Scale focuses is high throughput, high number, zero cost transactions. We are number 1 there already, because no one else is doing it, and we are doing like several million of those in a month. Not a single other project is doing it. So we are concentrating on the market segment where we are already number 1. And because we're a startup, we can't like boil the ocean. The blockchain world is huge, but we think that if we concentrate on the thing where people love us and on the thing which we do the best, that's what we need to do. So I don't know about the generic term for like scaling solutions. There are all kinds of scaling solutions. It's a big market. But if you're asking about the solution where people need zero fee transactions, yes, Scale is number 1 in this particular market segment, and we're growing, and we will put all of the energy to grow more and more of the focus and everything.
Cool. Let's see. Long time member. I know I see them a lot on Twitter. Jonas. I don't know if I'm pronounced. I have this thing. I'm trying to figure out how I pronounce these names. What's the current development status of connecting to Bitcoin? It was something that we talked about back in 2021.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I think in many ways it describes how you typically do a startup. When you like do a startup, you're trying to come up with like first iteration of something, like something people call MVP, minimum viable product. What is minimum viable product? You're trying to figure out the minimum of the features that people will actually use. Because sometimes if you create something really tiny, people won't use it, right? So, and typically if you have the MVP, the rest doesn't matter. Just to give you an example, if you have Microsoft Office, most people use like 5 buttons ever, including me, including myself, right? I don't know anything about Microsoft Office, about like copy, paste, whatever, like boldface. So once Microsoft Office had these 5 buttons, the rest of it is just for fun. I think it become the other 2,500 buttons they have. I mean, they don't matter. The same in our case. Once we build the MVP, the rest of it comes from the customers. Customers ask for things, we add them. And for Bitcoin, what happened is that when we were developing the product, we thought that connecting to Bitcoin was incredibly important for us. And when we released our MVP, we don't see at the moment so much interest from people. People don't come to us and say, "Why, guys, connect to Bitcoin? It's really important." We have lots of requests, feature requests, and we're trying to make priorities based on what people need. And sorry, guys, and we didn't really, we didn't have many requests for this. So Bitcoin, I think we can definitely use Bitcoin on Scale now. because you can actually move wrapped Bitcoin from Ethereum network to Scale. You could do this. And if someone comes to us and says, guys, can you connect to Bitcoin? We'll connect. But we don't see so much of it now. That's number one. And number two, can you tell you a bit of a philosophical thing? With Ethereum moving to proof of stake, when I was always very big enthusiast of Bitcoin, and I thought that there were many things about Bitcoin which were better than Ethereum. Some things about Ethereum were definitely better, like smart contracts and everything. But Bitcoin was always this like grassroots community. The founder doesn't exist, and it was really cool. But I kind of starting to feel that the proof of work thing is gonna be a big like downside for Bitcoin for the times to come, because Ethereum is proof of stake now. And I'll give you this like analogy. Let's say everyone drinks Pepsi or Coke, right? Pepsi. Let's take example of Pepsi, right? And it's a great drink. Everyone loves Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, whatever. And then let's say tomorrow a study comes, you read like Google News, and there's a study from, say, Harvard Medical School, which says, if you drink too much Pepsi, you may get an increased risk of, stomach cancer, right? And what's going to happen, this is kind of a tiny thing, but it's really bad. And it may actually, kill the brand. People may stop drinking Pepsi, or there'll be way less Pepsi sold, right? And I think that the POW, the fact that POW actually wastes so much energy, especially since Ethereum moved to proof of stake, and this also with all the things happening in the world, there are pretty much like wars about energy problems cause wars, right? People trying to control energy, and so there's lots of negative connotation, I think, about energy waste. And so I think there is something, I don't know how it's going to play, but it does actually dampen a lot, change a lot the way people get excited about Bitcoin. And we'll see what happens. But so we don't see this. We don't see the excitement, so much excitement about Bitcoin. If someone comes to us and says, "Wow, let's move Bitcoin to Scale, a direct bridge, not just through wrapped Bitcoin," we'll do it. But we, as a startup, we need to be lean. And I think the theory about Bitcoin was great, but we don't really see much interest at the moment.
Yeah, and I think your larger and more important point and takeaway from that is, we still need to Scale still needs to run like a software company that's building products for a particular market. And so, there may be a few people who say, I really like this, or a few people who say, I really like that. But at the end of the day, if we think of who our target customer is and what's going to help in the long term, more and more adoption of Scale Network, that's going to define, the new features that you guys implement as an engineering team, right? You're going to be listening to customers to understand, who's using what, and not just who, but how many and how important it is. And so, for a lot of folks who aren't familiar with agile, agile engineering, and they aren't familiar with, creating product feature sets, this is a thing that's a constant battle of figuring out, how do you prioritize the most important things, and how do you get the biggest bang for your buck? So yeah, super important one. And I've got my last question here. Is there a public mainnet tested on Scale? I'm trying to figure out what rock this person's been living under. So it's an interesting question, right? We're about to, and this is something we're working on, some fun surprises. We're about to hit our 2 years on mainnet, which is very exciting. And we're constantly running testnets. And actually, the question that I think would be really great, because from an engineering perspective, you can maybe explain how this works to folks, is, we are always running different testnets, right? Because we're always doing upgrades. Could you maybe talk to people a little bit about like what it means, like we're upgrading a network? Because it's not, people often forget, it's not like, hey, you've got a new version of Microsoft Word, great, here, you can download it onto your computer and turn it on. We don't run any of these nodes. There's all of this whole community of validators, all 47, I think, validator orgs now that have to upgrade the network each time we do it. So could you talk a little bit about that process?
It's Marcus, it's magic, actually. I'm a software engineer, and this thing, the blockchain, when you release the software, right, people start running it, and the first probably like several months, you got really like anxious and scared, because you're like, is this thing, does it keep running? We're talking now, right? We have probably like several blocks a second now, like on this thing created every second, and it keeps on running. So software has this very incredible thing. When you create it, like you code it once and it keeps on running. And sometimes it does feel magic. I currently, we have like over 20, 25 roughly like chains just running on the production net. We have also chains on the staging, on testing. We're just talking the production chains. And I don't even know if you add up all other networks, if there are 25 chains, if you add up like, Ethereum Mainnet, Ethereum Classic, Matic, we do run lots of chains. And these chains keep on running. So what we learned the hard way, Scale so far didn't have a crash moment, right? I mean, our software uses lots of mathematics. We tried really hard. We know other guys crashed like publicly like several times. You read like Cointelegraph, CoinDesk. When someone crashes, they publish this, right? And they have just typically like a one single chain, maybe like Solana. Maybe I shouldn't stop picking on Solana, but Solana has one chain, crashed several times. We have 25 chains. So it is a hard thing. What we learned, we didn't have crashes, but we did have a bit, several, like I would say, uneasy moments, right? And bugs and things. What we learned is that when it runs, it becomes like almost like a living organism. And so when you do an update or you change things, you need to do things really, really slowly. So we have procedures at Scale now where we do something new. The most important thing for us, not to introduce new things, but not to break old things. So we do things slowly, we test. We have an entirely like kind of a testing network, which we call staging. We have the validator network. We test things now. Our code changes are really, really slow now. We review them, we test them, I mean, you can make a change in a single line of code, and it can kill the network, if you're not careful. These things, the blockchains, they're like wine. If they don't die, the more years they run, the better they are, because you polish things. It's incredibly important to get things polished. So actually now at Scale, if before we were like coding, engineering, now lots and lots and lots of things about like maintaining software, talking to our validators, educating them, teaching them. We don't control them, so we don't have pretty much any like legal or any like financial way to tell them what to do, but we can teach them. They definitely ask us questions. We create tutorials, we improve the UIs and stuff. So many things are done very mundane, just fixing bugs and making sure that things run better. And that's our plan. What we understand is that the value of our software is not in new features, but in actually perfecting and polishing the thing that runs, because people actually do depend on this. Blockchain, actually, people put things on blockchain which are really, really important for them.
Yeah, and I can't more reiterate one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is whenever your team is updating and solution engineers are working with validators, since unlike some of the other projects, we don't run any of the nodes. This all gets updated by this enormous decentralized community of 46 validators that are running. I think it's up to like 155 or 160 plus nodes. And those validators aren't running all this of the same hardware even. And so not only are you asking them all to update this network independently, they're updating it on different kinds of machines. And so it's an important thing for people to realize, because I think oftentimes folks who join the SKALE community as a token holder have certain expectations on how things run, but don't understand kind of some of the technical nuances of what it means to not just build this decentralized open source network, but actually make sure that it runs on an ongoing basis. So huge shout out to you and your team. You guys do an amazing job. Huge shout out to the solutions engineering team, because you guys kind of work together. The only last question I have, which I'm pulling out because I think I know who it came from, and I think it's the funniest one that we got. Actually, not really a serious question, but Tom asks if we can do our next AMA with the SKALE team totally drunk. We're not going to do that, but maybe we can have a cocktail. Maybe we'll do it around cocktail hour.
I mean, I can my as far as engineering is concerned, both in SKALE Ukrainian office and now in Lisbon office, we always had like an open alcohol policy. People actually could drink a little if they wanted, and they actually didn't drink.
At happy hour only. Like we're not talking about like during work hours. Yeah, we have to have a little happy hour.
So actually, I think SKALE, I mean, I'll put it this way. Something that really is, Marcus, you probably will agree with me that, something which is, because SKALE is a small team, in many cases, people that work together don't have to become friends, right? You do your job, you know people, but they don't your friends. But in our case, actually, it did happen that many of our people actually did become friends over the years, especially. So we do have really good relationship, I think, inside the team. Sometimes we do drink wine, but I think we also understand that we need to deliver.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Tom, for the idea. And maybe we'll do a happy hour AMA. We have done that before. I think Jack did a happy hour. There was someone who used to run a crypto happy hour talk. So it's not unprecedented. It does actually exist. Anyway, I know there was a couple other questions that kind of floated around, but we're kind of hitting our time limit. I want to thank everyone who came and listened. I want to thank you, Stan, for taking the time to chat with folks. Please make sure you look below. We have a Telegram channel, which you should definitely join. There's an announcement channel. You can get all of that. So you get all of our announcements in real time. We also have our Twitter. It's @SKALE Network. Please join our Twitter. Please, we're active on there a lot. You can see our announcements on Twitter as well. Discord is a big channel for us, especially if you're a developer or you're a DApp developer who are out there and are interested in learning more. Please join our Discord channel. It's a big place where a lot of those folks are having those kinds of interesting conversations. We are open source, so please go to GitHub. You can see all of our code, so we are not just trying to pull one over on you. You can check it all out. And if you can't, I'm sure you have a friend who knows how to. It's all up there. We're incredibly active on GitHub. We are often one of the most active teams with GitHub commits. We also now, very excitingly, have our stats page. So please, skale.space/stats. And that will show you that we're super excited. We got to 8 million. We've got over 50,000 users. These are the kinds of numbers that we want to be shouting and are going to be shouting from the rooftops. I would encourage all of you as SKALE community members or potential SKALE community members to push all of that out on your socials yourself. You can help us as a community get more people to be aware of what SKALE is doing and how it is. And then to a lot of our amazing new dApps that are gone live, go check out Crypto Coliseum, Crypto Blades. You can check out Block Brawlers. We've got Delph's Table. We just announced Metaverse Invaders. In addition to that, we've got folks like Solidaria, who are doing some really cool and innovative things on the shopping side. You're going to be hearing more from Fireside, which is, you know, Mark Cuban's project. I was just on a really cool call about some new stuff that they're going to be coming out there. So there's a lot of stuff that's already live. Thank you everyone for coming. We super appreciate it.
Bye guys.
All right, bye.